Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy 24/7 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.
Welcome back to the Vandy 24/7 podcast here live from Memorial Gym as Joey Dwyer and myself recap Vanderbilt's 86-78 win over Texas. Big win for this team, Joey. They stay on the right side of the bubble. They improve to 17-6 overall, 5-5 in the SEC, and they needed it and they got it. I mean, Texas obviously came in here and played well, I thought. I mean, the last 10 minutes really of the game, they only had, two buckets? One buckets from the 10-minute mark to 21 seconds left in the game. They only made one shot. So the second half defensive woes obviously got a little bit better for Vandy today. But Joey, your initial reaction from the win?
Yeah, Mark Byington in classic Mark Byington fashion, so that you never want to say it's a must win, but really we'll say it for him. It was a must win for Vanderbilt. It felt like that. You've got 6 games in a row against ranked opponents coming up, and you just had to have this one. And Vanderbilt got it. That's a really nice win. Right now it would be a quad 1 win if the season ended today. I don't imagine it would stay there. Texas is ranked 29th, and they've got to stay within the top 30. Obviously a loss certainly doesn't help them there, but everything was hanging over Vanderbilt's head coming into today, right? 2 straight losses, 6 games against ranked opponents looming, a team that is right on the bubble. You find a way to win. That's a huge win for Vanderbilt, and maybe it's not the win that you're looking at on Selection Sunday and saying that's the win that got them in. It's probably going to be Tennessee or Kentucky. But these are almost just as important. You've got to avoid losing games that you should win. And this isn't a game that is a game that's a pushover. This isn't South Carolina. This is a really good Texas team, a team that obviously didn't have Tremont Mark, but I think is really gifted. And obviously Trey Johnson, the best NBA draft prospect to come in here in a few years, went 5 for 14. Vanderbilt wins, and man, does that matter today, Billy.
It does, and it really the first half was, not great for Vanderbilt. Texas got an early lead, and they were down at the half. And this is actually the first game Vanderbilt has won after being down at half. And we talked about it, I think, on a lot of these post-game shows where Vandy would lead by 1 or lead by 5 or 6 at the half, and but lose that lead, right? And they've obviously won a lot of games with leads at the half. But I thought that was an interesting note. Their 4th straight SEC home win, and I said this to you up there in the crow's nest during the game. Like, this team looks so much different at home here at Memorial. Obviously, a lot of teams look different at home. But, and what have I told you? Anytime Nickel hits 3 to 4 threes at home, Vandy's winning. They're winning that game. I mean, it's not that simple, obviously, but Nickel got going. Jalen Carey, though, you can't talk about today's game without Jalen Carey. First half, maybe the most dominant stretch of possessions we've seen from him all season. And then second half, he wasn't as dominant, but still had some big rebounds. 14 rebounds, career high. 18 points, career high, right? So Carey is starting to come into his own. And I think that's a huge storyline. And obviously Brandon wrote a great piece after the Kentucky game as well. And he was big against Tennessee. Against these physical teams, Carey has matched the physicality of the other team. Now, Texas is not the most physical team, but Shedrick, I thought, gave him some problems down low. Kaluma, at times, was a load down there. And they limited Trey Johnson. I mean, 15 points for Trey Johnson is, that's like 5 for Edwards. Edwards had a good night. We'll get into him. But I thought their defense on Trey Johnson was really good. Like I just mentioned, Texas did a really good job on Edwards in the first half. I mean, they locked him up, but he had 15 of his 17 points in the second half. Another big story, though, Magnon fouled out again, and he only played 9 minutes, which they're probably going to have to find some solutions for that. I think you need him in the game for more than 9 minutes. But McLaughlin and Carey got in foul trouble, but they found a way to counteract that, with the way they played, and they made adjustments there. But Joey, Carey and Nickel, they were the guys that talked to us after the game, and you asked Carey about the head banging on the basket there, and I feel like he does that every game. But he's such a force down low, and like I said, you can't talk about today without Jalen Carey.
When Jalen Carey's banging his head against the basket, it's a good day for Vanderbilt
Yeah.
hoops. He's fired up. I think his emotion can often be channeled for good, and it certainly was today. Obviously, he's not a guy that I don't think has a lot of bad emotion. He's a guy who seems pretty measured when he's off the floor, when he gets out there. Just a different animal. How about the stat, though, Billy? You mentioned Carey and Tyler Nickel. Heading into Saturday, Vanderbilt was 10-2 when Nickel scored in double figures, and was 6-1 in games that Carey got into double figures.
Wow.
I mean, those are the two X factors for this team, right? You need Edwards to do more than he did in the first half today. You need Hogard to do more. You need MJ Collins to do more. Man, was he huge defensively. But
Yep.
when those two guys are going, this team does not lose very often. And they were both going today. That's a real story. And even Jason Edwards, who had a real hard time in the first half, Julian Larry was face guarding him. Not everywhere he went. It took a long time for him to figure that out. I don't know that I've seen more difficult shot making from Jason Edwards all season. He had that one over there.
That was
where,
ridiculous.
Yeah, he jumps into the guys and it's just floating in the air. It's like Steph Curry shot a floater in pregame warmups, and it goes in, and then
he just finds ways to get his shot
Right.
throughout these games, whether he's at 0 points or just 2 points for most of the game. He finds ways to get loose. He'll go stretches of scoring. He's a microwave, and I think that's a credit to him. When's the last time he scored under 10 points? Right?
It was when he was
Mississippi
hurt,
State,
right?
maybe, he was hurt. So, and he broke the streak of 5 straight games of 18 plus. He was 1 point shy of that. But, it's hard to pinpoint just one guy with these wins for Vanderbilt. They really have to do it as a team. I think it's rare for you to look at one of these wins, these SEC wins for Vanderbilt, and go, man, that was because of Carey, or that was because of Edwards, that was because of Hogard closing it down the stretch. You needed all of it, right? You needed Nickel's 4 threes. You needed Hogard's 14 points in the second half. And he was, the Hogard experience is the Hogard experience, right? It's kind of a roller coaster, but he came through big down the stretch. You needed all of those performances today, and you got them, and that's been a common theme in their wins. You need it from everybody. That's why it's tough for this team, right? It's never easy.
Right.
But when they get it, they can compete with anybody.
Yeah, and what was the last time that Edwards and Hogard both had a half like that? That was a huge catalyst.
You're going to win when you get that.
Yeah, all season we've kind of talked about it's been one or the other a lot of times. Today it was both at the same time, and they're really hard to beat when that happens. Byington also had a really interesting point today about they have to be scrappy. They have to out-scrap you, and that's their identity, and they played to that today. Rodney Terry even said they give you a lot of problems just because they're such a scrappy bunch. Texas only turned it over 9 times, but you felt like a lot of that was due to the pressure that Vanderbilt forced. It wasn't just Trey Johnson throwing it away or Jordan Pope throwing it away. I got another guy who was really limited today, 3 for 10, one of their better players, Julian Larry, 4 for 8, Arthur Kaluma, 3 for 11. I thought Vanderbilt was much, much better defensively today, obviously. Needed it after the second half performances the last week. They come here, get some confidence. And how about MJ Collins? I asked Tyler Nickel after the game. You were on Trey Johnson a little bit, and by that I just meant he was switched on to him a few times. Yeah. And he immediately deflected and said, man, MJ Collins had a really good defensive outing against him. And Collins, even in the second half, a little bit picked it up offensively. Thought he made a few shots that loomed large late, but defensively he's got to get his props. He's been one of the better defenders, if not the best defender on this team all year, and did it today. But again, the story goes back to Jalen Carey, who I think might be a star blossoming right in front of our eyes here. He's got all the tools, he's got the swagger, he's got the presence. Obviously, he's 19, and you're seeing he's 19 at times, but you just wonder what could it be in 1 or 2 years, and that is a really exciting thought for a Vanderbilt fan at this point.
I think what's also encouraging about today, Joey, is the second half defense, right? And it was better in a different way. The second half defense, at least early in the second half, wasn't great, but a lot of it was because Vanderbilt's offense, right? So I think that's encouraging that the defense got better in the second half today. And again, they were at home, but it is what it is. Like I think this could have gone one of 2 directions, and it went the better direction today, right? They could have really struggled in the second half defensively again, But, if you look at Texas box score in the second half, like you said, Pope only had 3 points. They started to slow Shedrick down a little bit, only had 6. Trey Johnson got loose with 10, but still, you held him to 5 in the first half. But
and all those were in like a 60-second span, so it's not like he was
right.
He was nickel and diming you the whole half. He was on fire for 30 seconds. Right?
Yeah, Kaluma had 2 points in the second half, right? And so you look at that, and it was just a couple of free throws. I thought they did a really good job on Kaluma in the second half, who was obviously a load in the first half, but. What was working for Texas was Trey Johnson with Shedrick in the pick and roll. I thought they hit that a couple of times in the first half, but I thought Vanderbilt had more options. I think, and we said this, like Vanderbilt's a better team. They were 2.5-point favorite. I know Ken Pom projected a 1-point win for Texas, which was a little confusing, but that tells you how close they still are. It's not like Vanderbilt is leaps and bounds better than Texas, but I think what you wanted to see improve today, you saw. That was a lot of the second half defense, especially from the 10-minute mark on. Texas really only scored twice. And, you could take that and run with it. But heading into Auburn, a team that's the number 1 team in the country. They're playing right now against Florida. I think that's encouraging, and that was the talking point defensively. And Collins, again, did a great job on Trey Johnson. There's still some liabilities, whether it's Edwards, getting stuck every now and then. And down low, I thought, the second chance points hurt them a little bit today. Texas had 10 of them. But the other thing about today was Vanderbilt really didn't force a ton of turnovers, and they didn't play to their identity that we thought was their true identity, which is encouraging as well. Right? Texas only turned the ball over twice in the second half. Yeah, 7 times in the first half. So they took care of the ball. And Vanderbilt, for the game, only had points off turnovers, 10 points off turnovers, which, they've had games in a lot of these wins where they have 15 or 20. So I thought that, we learned a little bit more that this team can win without forcing turnovers and can win by playing better second half defense. And I think that's a good sign going into SEC play. I'm not saying they're going to go on a roll here or anything because you've got a gauntlet coming up, but I thought they came to play, particularly in the second half. I thought they were a little sluggish there in the first, but I think you'd rather have that than the other way around, which it's been a lot of the season where they come out hot in the first half and they take a lead going into the break, but they come out sluggish in the second. I thought, if you could reverse that like they did today, that you'll be fine.
Yeah, the story regarding the second half recently has been a lot of Vanderbilt's getting worn down. They're not rebounding super well down the stretch. The teams that they're playing just have more bodies, and that's kind of wearing on them. Today I thought it was the opposite. I thought Vanderbilt wore down Texas throughout a lot of the second half. Even the rebounding battle that was a story, right? Vanderbilt. If I told you that before the game, you'd be like, man, Vanderbilt's probably screwed. 27 defensive rebounds. Vanderbilt had 17 offensive rebounds today. Jalen Carey had 9 by himself. Vanderbilt out-rebounds Texas, a team that I thought they matched up well with, but obviously Arthur Kaluma is a matchup that I don't think is super favorable for them, and they've got a couple other guys like him who rebound really well. They ran a lot of big lineups today, even if their center wasn't huge, and even if Shedrick wasn't a huge issue for Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt was able to respond to that. I thought Vanderbilt really took advantage of some switches that they got late. And overall, just out-physical Texas. 7 of the 9 turnovers that Texas had were forced by steals. That's a problem for Texas, but I think tells you a lot about Vanderbilt as well. So this team is figuring it out a little bit on the defensive end. They're figuring out how to wear teams down a little bit like they've been worn down. And Rodney Terry even said after the game, it's kind of like a give-and-take league where a lot of teams are losing 2 in a row, and maybe you don't panic because of that. So, guys, I think this team might have something. You look at the rest of the schedule, and there's 6 ranked teams coming up, and then you go play Arkansas here, 10 p.m.
9, that's 10 Eastern, 9 Central. Yeah, it's still crazy.
Still crazy. And then Georgia on the road, they've got, 7 or 8 games left? They probably only got to get 3 more and then maybe one in the tournament, and that's even a stretch there. They might get in just by having 8 with the tournament. They are in really good shape, and like we mentioned, this was a must-win game, not only because of that stretch ahead, but just now that makes that stretch look a lot less daunting, and today did a lot for this team, not only in terms of them getting a quad 1 win, but just in terms of how it sets them up. You feel like they are in a really good spot to be an NCAA tournament team after today.
Willie on YouTube says Edwards only 24 minutes with the laughing emoji, and Willie, I get it, and I know we've talked a lot about that, the minutes numbers for Edwards. But I noticed today, and I think you caught on to this earlier than I did, I don't want to say liability, but there are times where the other team looks at Edwards on the other side of the floor and says, we're going to post him up, or we're going to get him in a ball screen and get a switch, or we're going to back cut him. Like, he's not a bad defender. I think he's improved. But that's the issue. You're going Huffman on defense and Edwards on offense.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the conundrum they're in. And so, Willie, I was more with you, maybe a week or two ago, but I've come to the conclusion that they're doing what they can, and they know they need him on the floor at certain times. But I think they've done a good job of, and Huffman's not going to score, right? Huffman is not a scorer, but he's been a good defender, a good enough defender on these guards. I thought Larry got loose on Edwards a couple of times, and Pope had a few threes that were big. But I've kind of flipped a little bit on the Edwards minutes discussion. That I think it's fine, and 17 points in 24 minutes. I think that's showing you that you don't have to play him maybe 35 minutes. And I might be saying this, I might be speaking differently in a loss, to Auburn or, down the stretch here. But I think today showed that you could do that. But you need a lot of other things working as well. The margin's just so small. So I wanted to get that out there from Willie. Matthew says, having Carey and McLaughlin on the court at the same time makes a huge difference. If we had the big from USC, Kajani Wright on this roster, we'd be much better. Still brings me even more confidence for next year. That's an interesting. They don't do that a ton.
They did a lot more today too. He mentioned he wanted to do it, but they didn't have enough depth to really do it as often. I thought he was a little more fearless today with that than he has been in the past. I think he's often been scared of foul trouble, and that's why he hasn't done it. But the guys were in foul trouble today, and I thought played well. Byington had a good point talking about foul trouble, and he said, if you're worried about foul trouble and you're playing like it, then you're probably going to foul. But I thought they had the right mindset tonight to play together, and I thought it really helped them. That's why they out-rebounded them, I thought. I think they had I have it in the story somewhere. They had a real rebounding advantage when those two were on the floor. They had 22 combined rebounds and a lot of offensive rebounds among those, double-digit offensive rebounds among those. So that was something that worked for them tonight, and I thought they were more intentional about maybe putting that into place than they had been throughout the early part of the season. That mattered for them today, and I wonder if that's something you see a little bit more. Obviously, it depends on the matchup, depends on the pace, depends on the foul trouble, but when you can do that, it feels like it's a better spot than maybe they have in some other lineups.
Charles says every game it feels like this team misses 5+ chances to pass to wide open cutters to the rim.
And they also don't make layups very well. They're 8 for 21 today.
Yeah, and I was going to get to that because Jake asked the question, why does Tanner struggle scoring? He's a great defender, but struggles scoring. Yeah, I mean, we've known that. He's a great defender. That's why he's on the floor. I think he's steady on offense. He's not really going to score, though. But he's also a freshman. He'll develop that. I think the bigger issue here is there's some other guys that struggle scoring around the rim as well. Mm-hmm. Like Carey missed a couple of bunnies. McLaughlin, I mean, it's like everybody. I don't know what the layup number was today, Joey, but it hasn't been great. I mean, they need, and Byington talked about that after the Florida game. Like, if we get 2 or 3 more of those little bunnies to go on putbacks, maybe it's different. And that's got to get better, right? And I think that's got to get better if they want to make the tournament, right? I mean, there's going to be some close hung games against Ole Miss, I think, and Missouri. Arkansas could be close here. Georgia on the road. Like those 4, you got to start scoring around the rim better because they're not the strongest team scoring around the rim.
Yeah, they certainly aren't. And some of that's size, some of that's just guys going in there out of control or being scared of a shot blocker. I thought tonight that was somewhat of a thing as Shedrick was in there. He's got long arms. And they had some other guys that block shots as well, but that's got to be fixed. And that's been an issue for a couple weeks now. I remember at first in the Alabama game, I asked Byington about it, and he about shook out in his chair when he saw that. He was like, really?
Yeah.
8 for 18 or whatever.
I think it was 4 for 24 one game.
Yeah,
something like that.
And it's just you got to have that be better. And that indicates to you kind of the size disadvantage they're at and maybe the athleticism disadvantage too. I read a Jeff Borzello piece a few weeks back, and it was an opposing coach's piece about Vanderbilt, and the coaches were talking about how they're not that athletic of a team. And I do think in some ways that makes this more remarkable what they've done in year one. It's not like they come in and get a bunch of guys who are world-beating athletes. It's guys who know their role, guys who are hungry, and that's why they've gotten to this point. And I think that's why you ultimately believe that they've got a chance to be an NCAA tournament team, not just because of the resume, but you kind of believe that this group of guys will will it into existence, and they've done it to this point.
to wrap it up, I thought Rodney Terry had a really good quote about this team. They had talking about Vandy, they had a physicality about themselves in the paint that we couldn't match. Carey was a man in the paint. I mean, it was a grown man's game, as we all know, and the crowd willed them today. It feels like when they're here, no matter who is in here as the opponent, they've got a shot. They've got a puncher's chance. And we're going to talk all about the Auburn game coming up. I think they've got a puncher's chance. Mark Byington said they don't have a weakness, and I might agree with him on that. It's obviously going to be really tough, and we'll talk all about that. But he credited the crowd. He said these Saturday games are fun. Memorial was an incredible environment. Our crowd was a big part of that. They helped pull us out, and that's what you got to have. You know, I would love to know the road record for these SEC teams. It's not a good one. And, you know, for Vanderbilt to get a win today, I think shows, again, they're on track, right? They haven't fallen down a hill here, right? I mean, if you look at their schedule, have they lost 3 in a row?
No, this was going to be their first
3
in a row.
You know, they've lost 2 in a row a couple of times. They haven't lost 3 in a row. They steady the ship. They steady the waters. And this was not easy today. Texas is a good team. They're going to fight. They'll, you know, I don't know where they'll be in the bracketology, but they'll hang around, you know, the bubble there. Vanderbilt is on the right side of the bubble. They may bump up a seed. I think they're 11 right now.
Their last 4 in right now.
Yeah, they might get thrown into that 10 spot. We'll see. But good home win. I still think they probably need a road win, you know, here. At least one of them down the stretch. Maybe it's Georgia. But either way, Joey, great win today. You know, and they needed it, and they got it. And I think that says a lot about this team, the coaching staff, that when you absolutely had to have it, you know, we could be talking very differently about this season right now.
Yeah.
You know, we could be negative Nellies saying, man, this team, you know, one of us would have a hot take saying this team would, you know, isn't making the tournament, right? So, you know, it's a big win, and you know, it also, I'm happy for the fans too that they're able to share in this after just a not fun season last year, and they've got a lot of magic back in this place. And yeah, you had Chance Mallory visiting today, the Tennessee target, Maryland as well.
Tennessee,
so
Maryland,
things are trending up here, Joe.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting too when you bring up the fans. The new rule about you can't storm until a minute after, which Billy, they're going to storm if they beat Auburn.
Yeah.
They're not listening.
That's not going to work.
Respectfully.
Vandy's going to get fined again.
Yeah, Vandy's going to get fined again if they beat Auburn. But I do think that them putting that out there creates a different type of culture. It's not going to get to Clemson football where the entire stadium is on the field after the game, but I think that was interesting. It's interesting to kind of see how that statement turned into this, to where most people were out on the court after the game just hanging out. And that could be a cool thing for this program and for this team, maybe a staple of it, because I don't think that happens a ton around college basketball, especially at the high major level. So really, I thought that was cool, and I think it was big to win in front of Chance Mallory too. That's their top guy in 2025 right now. So a lot of good things going for Vanderbilt basketball, and you felt like they were maybe on the brink a little bit today, obviously right on the bubble, but they find a way to win against a good team, and that says a lot about this team. And again, like you said, it says a lot that they're able to do it when it mattered most.
And it says a lot that the Wash House is still involved with us here.
It does, yeah. They sat through last season.
Yeah, it says a lot about
all
them.
Our rapid reactions where we thought the people in the comments were going to...
Where you encouraged them to stop.
Yeah.
But either way, no, they're still with us, and we're glad that the Wash House is still sponsoring our basketball coverage. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Well, let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry, ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Vandy gets back on the bubble, or stays on the bubble. They're not back in the bubble. They stay on the right side of the bubble to get a win over Texas, 86-78. They improved to 17-6 overall, 5-5 in the SEC. Number 1 Auburn coming up right here in Memorial Gym Tuesday night, assuming Auburn beats Florida, which they probably will, 6 o'clock on the SEC Network. So we'll talk all about that one. We'll preview that here really the next couple of days, and get ready for that one. But good win for Vanderbilt today, and thanks again to the Wash House. Thanks again for everybody rolling in here to our live. Hopefully you go back and listen to it if you weren't able to watch it live. But that's Joey Dwyer. I'm Billy Derrick, and thanks for watching another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.